Welcome to the Matthew Moran podcast. Here you will find a series of in-depth conversations with the world's best nature photographers, conservationists, designers, editors, writers and publishers. You will get an insight into the lives of creative professionals and industry experts, and it is a chance to hear their stories, personal journeys and how they carve a niche to make a living in a rapidly changing, highly competitive but hugely exciting field. I've had the pleasure of working with many of my guests over the years and have learned so much from spending time with them and having conversations about what it means to be a creative freelancer, sourcing exciting projects, sharing skills through partnerships, and not losing sight of your goals and dreams. This podcast is my chance to share these conversations with you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Today we're mixing it up for the festive season. This is the first of a two-part podcast special. Part 2 will be released on the 27th of December, so if you've overindulged with food and need to kick back and digest, or perhaps you want to sneak into a quiet place to avoid some annoying family members for a couple of hours. Either way, I encourage you to listen with intent, and hopefully after listening you'll be encouraged to act. I certainly am after spending just a few hours with this guest. So without further delay, let me introduce her. Today, my guest is Joanne McArthur. Jo is a Canadian photojournalist who has spent the past 20 years documenting the invisible animals, the ones we eat, wear, test on and confine, yet rarely see. Jo's commitment to shine a light on the suffering of billions of animals exploited for human consumption is unparalleled. And she's travelled to more than 60 countries, documenting everything from bullfighting and battery hens to fur farms and the brutal rattlesnake roundup in Texas. Despite the horrors she's witnessed, spend just a few minutes in Jo's company and there's a warm, kind and compassionate person who has dedicated most of her life to animal advocacy. Now at the age of 43, there is no sign of her letting up. Jo's passion and energy in the fight for justice for animals is uncompromising, yet her images have a beauty, an empathy, and each tells a story so clear it's hard not to be moved by her work. Jo's photographs have been published worldwide, and she's also had success in international photography competitions, including the Wildlife Photographer of the Year, where she won the People's Choice Award. She presents keynote presentations to schools, universities and festivals around the world, and earlier this year she launched We Animals Media, an agency with a collection of thousands of images and videos dedicated to animal photography and filmmaking. It was a great pleasure meeting Jo while she was documenting the Extinction Rebellion protest in London just a month ago, and in between shoots we got to sit down together and spend some time talking about her life and her work and hear her inspirational stories. You won't want to miss a minute of this. Enjoy. Jo, we're here. We're live back in Tottenham in my studio, and this is another great reason for running these podcasts, is being able to connect with other photographers, and I'm lucky enough that I live in a city like London where a lot of stuff is going on, and you're here for the Extinction Rebellion protests that are going on over the last couple of weeks, and also for the Wildlife Photographer of the Year.
And a new book. Where to start interrupting you?
Not at all. That's great, because I actually didn't have that down in my notes, but I guess because it's new, we can't really find out about it yet.
It's very new. Yeah, it's that new. Exactly. But what people don't know is that we've been hanging out all afternoon, having non-stop chatter about love and life and work. It's been really good.
Really good, and yeah. I was under strict instructions from quite early on with Jo to let's really not talk about work or photography because we don't want to be repeating ourselves. I think we did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I entertained you with my misadventures in dating. It's fun.
It's been great fun, and yeah, this is a really nice kind of happy accident. I saw Jo had another. This is your second success in Wildlife Photographer of the Year, which is obviously a great thing, and I keep a keen eye on who's in town, and I also learned about your work in much sort of greater depth just this time last year, actually, in Bristol at the Wildscreen Film Festival, and you spoke there, and I really loved your presentation and was actually really moved by it, and also thankful for it, because you're doing something quite different than most wildlife photographers, of course, and also something quite different that festival showcases. So it was great that they gave you a good platform to talk about your work.
Yeah, they did, and I was feeling very fortunate about that, which came from the first Wildlife Photographer of the Year People's Choice Award, and it just led to all sorts of speaking engagements, which I do regularly, but not for the conservation world, not for the photography world. It's often for the animal advocacy world, or, I don't know why I speak to so many law schools, but I do. It's kind of odd. But yeah, found myself speaking with photographers and conservation types, and I really need the work to go in that direction, because photographers and conservation photographers are influential people, and I really want to be bringing my message and my type of photography over to that world, because I believe it's just as important as photographing, wildlife and the charismatic animals, and so I photograph the invisible animals, as you know, and yeah, people are sort of taking a chance on me when they invite me to these conferences, and I'm the outlier.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we mustn't sort of kind of take the assumption that everybody listening to this kind of knows who you are and knows your work, but I love that you've coined this phrase, the invisible animals.
Yeah, the invisible animals are those who we have a close relationship with, but we fail to see them in our lives. So the invisible animals, those we have a close relationship with, but what we don't see, we wear them. We literally have them on our bodies, leather and fur, and we eat them every day, and so on. We use medicines that are tested on them, and yet they, as individuals and in the huge numbers, are invisible. Not like the squirrels, not like the dogs and cats we share our homes with. And these animals are equal in sentience. They are equal in value. They value their own lives. They wish to live. They experience complex emotions. And yet we sequester them away in factory farms and in labs in incredibly abysmal conditions that we don't know about. Yeah, and so, I mean, those things are really hidden from the public, and there are ag-gag laws, and they do everything to keep their lives hidden from us. And so that's my job, is to go to these places. This is my self-designated job. It's like super depressing and awful and scary, and I don't want to do it. I don't want to have to do it. I would like to have permission to, go where I go and document what I see, but that's not what the job is. It's investigative work. And yeah.
I was thinking it's a little bit, it's quite the contrary to a wildlife photographer getting really excited to go, to an Indian national park and see tigers. I guess you don't really kind of get that, oh wow, I can't wait to see all these foxes in cages from this fur farm, or these mink, or, these chickens cooped up.
It's exactly that. And when I was at the German Film Photo Festival a couple of years ago, someone was looking at my work and came up and said, "How do you get any pleasure from your work?"
That's a really good question.
Yeah, and he was a wildlife photographer, and I said, "Oh, well, that's not the point for me." And he was astounded, really. And he's like, "You dedicate your whole life, like, look at this, look at these books, like, this is what you do on purpose." Yeah, and it's what I do on purpose. And I think that when you open the door, whatever that door is, your intellect, or your heart, to these issues and the problems and the animals and the individuals, you can't close that door. And that was the case for me. So when I sort of became sensitized to other animals, these others, these invisibles, I couldn't turn away. Yeah, and they have no voice, and they have no representatives in the media anywhere. I mean, it's shit work to, sneak into a farm, crawl through mink shit and pig shit, and document terror and sadness and depravity, which is our depravity as well. And it's not fun podcast. It's not fun, but it's necessary.
Sure.
And it used to be just me, but there are so many of us doing it now.
Yeah, and that's the great thing. And we were talking a little bit earlier about this kind of crossover into investigative journalist work and, having a certain degree of success in that, and then moving over to, in the kind of wildlife photography community, which is also changing. And
Yes.
I guess and is this something that you had thought about in the past, or is this a trend that had changed in photography, that it was going more or wildlife photography was going more towards a photojournalist way or style? What was the sort of, certainly with your success in the wildlife photographer of the year over the last couple of years?
I can't say that there was a direct goal, unfortunately, or a direct path. It was passion motivating me to be out in the field all the time, which is actually not exactly the right way to do things. I mean, certainly.
Why is that?
Well, because I was out investigating things that were interesting to me, but they were ending up on a hard drive. I mean, literally 6 to 8 months of each year in the field, and not having the infrastructure to get images out. Whereas a lot of photographers will shoot something carefully and then spend a lot of time editing, getting it out. I was just running around like a mad person because there's an emergency everywhere in every single country. Whether it's, the richest of countries like Sweden, or whether it's in Cameroon, there are really critical problems that I have, been reading on and learning about. And so running around, shooting everything is not the best way. And yet, I mean, it did get me here.
Yeah, sure. And at that time, had you been thinking about, right, because it's one thing photographing, and that's incredibly hard work, refining your craft, honing your skills, getting really, really good body of work. And then it's like equally the same as effort to get the work out there and to get these stories out there and to get recognition and to tell the people the truth about what's going on.
Well, there's a lot there to unpack and dissect, but if I could do things differently, I would shoot less, and I would have more mentors to look at the work and to tell me how to improve, and to do a really painful cull. We all need that as photographers.
Yeah.
We need critical editors, and I was more interested in getting the stories and rushing around and shouting about all these things that I've seen, but without a good strategy for getting the stories out into the world, which is different now. It's completely different how I work, and with We Animals Media.
Yeah.
I don't think I answered your question.
No, that's okay. And actually, it might be a good point, because we're going to talk about We Animals Media, but we already digressed right off the bat of why you're here.
Oh yeah.
In London, and you've been here a week already.
Mm-hmm.
You've got another week left. The timing of this trip is good and organised. You've got another award in Wildlife Photographer of the Year. But talk a little bit about your work with Extinction Rebellion and why you wanted to come here and document what they were up to.
It was really nice that WPY was happening at the same time as Extinction Rebellion, and what a blessing to be able to come and photograph these tens of thousands of people who are taking action. And there are all sorts of ways of taking action, and you can, whatever your skills are, you can use them. As I always say, you can, lobby, and you can go into science, and you can do arts and stuff, but there has to be room for direct action and getting out on the streets and building community. And an arm of Extinction Rebellion is Animal Rebellion.
Okay.
And so they are bringing the animal equation into this massive problem and catastrophe, which is the climate crisis. And so factory farming contributes directly to the climate crisis. And people aren't talking about that enough. I think it's because it's too close to home. Eating animals, we all eat animals, and we all want to eat animals. And it seems like a painful thing, too much of a sacrifice to give that up. I mean, carnism is an inherent ideology, and we all take part in it. Most people take part in it. And so that's why Animal Rebellion is like a small arm of this, but a very necessary one. And it's a way of amplifying the message about animal use and factory farming and the environmental overlaps. So I'm here for EXI, but I'm here for Animal Rebellion, really to help show what they're doing, which is taking part and, with their signs and their message and their goals.
Great.
And so what kind of things have you been up to this week? Where have you been photographing, and you haven't managed to get arrested yet or anything?
I've been really lucky.
Yeah.
On the arrest front, unlike hundreds of people here.
Have you been arrested?
Never.
Wow, that's quite extraordinary.
It's actually a miracle at this point.
Yeah.
Just a matter of time. It is.
That's amazing. You kind of maybe you just riding Lady Luck. I actually asked when Jo and I were out earlier. I asked her about, do you carry a press pass and that type of thing, and she said, no, I just smile nicely, and your smile's working, right?
Oh, it's because I like people.
Yeah.
I like people, and I'm really curious about people, and I think that is one of the key ingredients to being a successful photojournalist. You're out in the field, you're in the midst of everything, and you want to get in the thick of everything. And so I think you have to be a people person to an extent, or you have to have a lot of empathy at the very least.
Sure.
Yeah, and so when I'm shooting, I like to just humble myself and be small and appreciate what's going on around me and learn from every little thing that I'm seeing. Oh, it's a great way to be in the world, I have to say.
Yeah.
Being a photojournalist, I'm so lucky to be able to immerse myself in this world quietly and learn through the lens.
That's awesome, and I can imagine as well, with photographing these people and what they're up to, they're in a way, especially in the social media age, they are happy to have their picture taken. You're not going to come across too much, especially around what's been going on here in London in the last couple of weeks. People want to get their message out. They see photographers walking around with gear. It's like, yeah, well, you're helping in whatever way if these images are going to be published online in the press. So you're going to have a welcome audience here, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
And I also really appreciate that these people are vulnerable. I could use the images against them. They don't know if I will do that. And also the people who are putting themselves on the line and getting arrested and coming out with signs and taking part are subject to ridicule by many, many, many people. And so they are trusting me to create an image that will share their message
of course.
And be empathetic. And yeah, it's a responsibility.
Yeah, I saw, of course, these things, Twitter it has its advantage, but it can also be a bit of a cesspit, can't it? And I saw a photograph of a group of Extinction Rebellion from this week, in McDonald's, buying their lunch. And okay, it's not a good look, is it? You've got their flags, but hey, look, no one's perfect. These people are still out there, and they've given up their time. And I myself went down and just to have a look, also take some pictures, and I was struck. I don't know why I was struck, but it was just incredibly well organised. I of course went there with my own judgments, but I was hugely impressed, and the vibe was incredibly quiet, peaceful, and these people are not doing it for fun or for anarchy or for kicks. It's, I think, at the core, whatever you think about the general look of it. It's something that can't be ignored, and people that do post pictures on Twitter to go, Extinction Rebellion people in McDonald's, it's like a total fraud. It's that kind of cynicism doesn't really get you anywhere. At least these people are out there doing stuff, which is great.
The gotcha mentality.
Yeah.
It's like it gets them off the hook.
Yeah.
And allows them to just sit on the couch and not take part while the world burns.
Yeah. So what kind of things have you shot this week in London?
I've been trying to take portraits of the people involved and their ideas and their care and their humanity. It's hard, who's even to say that I've been successful at all. But also getting in there in the middle of things with a wide angle. That's always fun.
Yeah.
And I haven't had a close enough edit yet to really paint a picture. But I'm trying to paint a picture from the details to the faces, to the wides, to the camps.
And what's that experience like when you've got a wide angle and, I saw you at work today, it was great, you got right in the thick of it, and I suppose it goes back to what the German photographer asked you, how do you get a thrill out of this? That must also be exciting. When you're not obviously photographing animals in distress, you're photographing people protesting. I can imagine it'd be quite a thrill.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And we all have our ways of being in the moment and ways of doing that. And for me, it's with the camera. And it's quite addictive to be out in the world trying to create something beautiful or out of something tragic or out of whatever is in front of you. It's really an exciting thing to try to convey what you're seeing or a moment or how you're feeling about it to the rest of the world. It's a big challenge. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And it's just such a joy.
That's awesome. So you can have fun doing what you do.
I do. I do. And with the work that is not fun, and a lot of it is not fun because I'm, like war photographers, we're going into these painful places to photograph traumas and violence and suffering. It's not fun to witness those things, but what is satisfying is to do something with the images. It's satisfying to educate people, create change, and just be a tiny part of that. Visuals are a part of the machine that will create change. So it's nice to be part of something.
Yes. Yeah, that's very much what in a previous podcast with Stefan, he talked about himself being a communicator, rather than a photographer. And it's like you become exactly what you just said, one piece of government decision makers. People will always need images as well as data and text.
Yes.
In order to paint the full picture.
And I've built this whole work of mine, this whole project, which is We Animals, in a way that it can be easily accessible to the world for free. And so you don't know who's looking, right? And you don't know who's looking and using the images until someone happens to get back to you. And not a lot of people do.
Right.
But it's incredible how many people write to us, the team and I, to say that one of my images, encouraged them to be plant-based, or the number of images that end up on billboards, or you just don't know.
And that's when you have those kind of yes moments. This is because in your work, when you're seeing a lot of really dark stuff, it must be very rewarding to have that feedback. And
it is the reward.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because there's not much of a reward when you're leaving a farm. For example, like let's say I go into a broiler chicken farm. Broilers are meat chickens or hens. In a single night, I can go to a property that has 1 million or over 1 million animals cramped into these conditions. And there's no pleasure in witnessing their suffering. And then there's no pleasure in leaving other than you got out safely without getting a baseball bat to the head.
Yeah.
But I'm there to try to capture an essence of what their experience might be, but then I leave without them. I have all this freedom as a human, and humans make all the decisions and we have all the autonomy, and they have nothing. They just, when they look at us, be it a pig or a chicken or an animal in the lab, they're always looking at us humans like, what's next? What are you going to do to me? What are you going to do to my body? Where are you taking me? Are you taking my children? And then like, then they see themselves next in line for slaughter, and they're just looking at you for answers or for mercy.
It's raw, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And so I carry that, and I carry these precious images out with me so that other people can see what I see and hopefully connect.
And in some kind of, Hollywood fantasy, it'd be great just to kind of unlock all of those cages and set all of those individuals free, but ultimately they'll end up in the same fate somehow, and it won't help either.
Yeah, sometimes I photograph open rescues, which is really nice. Yeah, and that's a form of direct action where activists will go in, not with balaclavas on or anything. They go in and they film everything. They film themselves removing, let's say, 10 hens from a cage and then bringing them to a sanctuary and saying, this is who we are, this is why we're doing this. We're aware that this is illegal, but this is our moral imperative to help when we can. So that's always nice. I do get to photograph some of those.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes myself as well, I can rescue an animal, which is like kind of straying from the topic and straying from like what I'm supposed to be doing and how people will see me. I want people to see me as a professional photographer, not as, a thief. So why am I getting into this? I guess, sometimes I'm able to rescue a dying animal and take someone with me.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really getting into it, but there was one time I was photographing a dumpster full of dead rabbits in plastic bags, but there was one still alive, suffocating in a plastic bag. Yeah, and we were already, leaving the property, and it was broad daylight, and there was no way I could leave, and so I broke open the plastic bag and took this rabbit.
Wow.
Yeah,
And what happened to the rabbit?
she lived about 5 days.
Oh.
Yeah, she was really far gone.
Did you take her home or?
Yeah, we brought her right to a vet,
All right.
and then we gave her care, and
Yeah.
she didn't make it, but at least she died not from suffocation, but without, too much
Yeah.
pain and medication and care and love.
Yeah, and I get it because we, also live in a world of, there's certain ways of doing things, and you shouldn't interfere, and it was maybe a year or so ago. I follow Paul Nicklin on Instagram. He's got like 5 million followers, that huge influencer, and he posted this image or a story of this bald eagle that they'd rescued, and this bald eagle was being attacked by other eagles, and they'd like slammed it into the water. It couldn't fly, so he decided, to interfere, take this bald eagle. They brought it in the boat, took it to the shore. And, then there's my brain starts going, okay, well, that bald eagle would have made, a meal for other animals, blah, blah, blah. So, frown upon. But like, he's just showing, the human side of it. And okay, you can rescue that one animal and, you get a good feeling from it, you get a buzz from it. But like, the science community be like, oh, no, you shouldn't, never interfere, never touch.
Well, let's look at the line here between humanity and other animals, we animals and those animals. So would he have left like a child to drown because the child possibly could be, fish food?
Yeah. Sure.
It's nice to help others in the natural world and in the city world and the world we've created. We all need to help each other.
Yeah, and I guess there's a fundamental problem with the argument straight away of viewing it as us and them.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah, exactly. There's this hierarchy, and they would never have left one of their teammates to drown and be fish fodder.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, if of course, like, animals eat animals and all of, the natural things that happen. But it doesn't mean that you should never help someone who's in need.
Yeah, exactly. So we talked a bit about we animals, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about that because it's this incredible archive. I mean, one of the questions I had for you later on was, you do so much stuff. How the hell do you find time for it all? But, running a picture agency now, and I know, you mentioned having a team, of course that helps, but was this also a bit of a dream of yours of having this archive that people could access?
The dream has always been how can I do the most good for the most number of animals? I guess that wasn't always the dream. I mean, I was rushing around shooting, but then it was like, okay, let's employ some strategy here. I have a huge body of work, which is called We Animals, and the world needs access to it. And so how do I do that? So we built a framework for images. There are about 12,000 images there from around the world. I've traveled to almost 60 countries now to document our relationship with animals, other animals. And and so I needed to put them somewhere where people could access the images freely. They can make a donation in exchange for image usage, but they don't have to. And it comes back to what Britta Yashinsky was saying, is that everything she does is for the animals. And I really appreciate that she's a friend and a colleague and a comrade of mine and does things for that reason. I really resonate with that. It's how to do the best for them, which is why I put my images on an archive, and it's also why I've built We Animals Media from We Animals. It was just the path, I think, that was inevitable. Like, how can I do better? How can I reach more? And that's by bringing in more people. So instead of having, Joe McArthur out there with their camera, let's bring in as contributors lots more people who are doing this kind of work, give them a platform, bring their work into the archive. So we're doing a lot of building right now.
That's awesome.
Oh.
And how do you you know, the nitty gritty. We don't have to go into it in great detail, but like make it work. You know, this is, okay, you're a photographer, you've got all this content shot over a number of years and you're giving it away for free. You know, how do you make this pay?
Money. We need money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we have grants right now and we have monthly donors. It's been a really fun journey of entrepreneurship. I really enjoy running a business and figuring out how to do it. And I like taking pictures. I like doing that. So it's like, okay, well, you know, initially the event and wedding photography paid for the good stuff, as I call it, which was my animal work, which is what I was passionate about. And so I have shot like 500 or 600 weddings.
Wow. So it was true. I was saying to my partner, Ro, I said, I was it 60 or 600? I mean, that's a lot of work. How many were you doing?
Yeah, for years and years.
Yeah.
And the food photography, the event photography, all paid for the documentary work.
Yeah, so it just freed you up for flights to places.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it freeing me up.
Right.
It was just paying for, just a colossal amount of work and determination to go. Yeah. And but then I, you know, started getting more advice and teammates and colleagues, and one of them said, well, it's time to do a platform, like a monthly crowdfunding platform. Mm-hmm. I was really nervous about that because I just am very proud of doing everything on my own.
Yeah. Learning how to delegate is a real skill.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And a challenge. It's been good, though. But we started a monthly platform, and so all of a sudden we were getting about 5,000 Canadian a month.
Great.
Which paid for a lot of things, and flights and additional staff, social media, full-time communications, director of operations, archivist, editor.
Wow. And did this happen quite quickly once you started getting these donations? Were you able to employ people?
Yes, so it was me, and then now there are 7 of us, full and part-time, and that's over the last 3 years.
Wow.
And so we had the monthly donations from amazing people who care enough to donate like $5 a month or $10 a month. We get larger grants, and we also got a really nice grant from the Open Philanthropy Project. So they gave us a big chunk of money to build We Animals Media. They were watching what we were doing, and they're like, hey, how can we help you scale up?
Wow, that's the dream.
It is.
Yeah, to get an offer rather than hustle. Yeah. I'm sure you've done tons of hustling as well, but I suppose the hustle is in also just getting the work and getting people that can see that you're serious and you know, you believe in what you're doing. Yes,
and you have to show that you're serious. I think a lot of people right now want to fast track. They want to find a way to fast track to a degree of success that they haven't earned. So you have to work hard. You have to show you're good for it. And that's why we have monthly donations. Is because people were like, okay, well, she's been out there for over 10 years now. Like, we know she's not going anywhere, and we know she's taking better and better pictures. She's committed. So we're going to give her a couple dollars a month. And patience is not my virtue, and it's not the virtue of many people. But really, you have to put your nose down and work hard, and don't expect shortcuts. You might get lucky and have a shortcut, but it's not going to last. You have to get out there. You have to work hard and build. And building is fun, right? Like, we're often focused on the prize instead of the journey. But the journey is great. You learn so much.
Totally. Slow is fun, isn't it? The slow progress.
Yes.
This again, Stefan said in the last podcast that, you know, if it goes quickly, it can collapse quickly.
Yeah, right.
As well.
Yeah,
you know,
I agree.
You watch any of those kind of whatever talent TV shows, and you know, quick to stardom, and then they're like, you know, a month later in the press because they've, you know, got some drug addiction, or their relationships like fallen apart. Yeah. That's maybe a bad analogy, but like I really enjoy that. I think the slow process is great because it also takes, you know, there's so many of us out there photography wise, there's so many photographers doing this, that to really you know, hone your skills, learn your craft, and also just to find your voice as well. You know, you can be a great photographer, but to find what really resonates with you, that you get that feeling in your belly, like, okay, that's what I want to do, and this is what I want to specialize in, is how you get the recognition and get the audience.
I can't add to that. That's exactly
Thanks.
it. That's exactly it.
Actually, we just mentioned books. So you have 2 books currently published, and you're working on a 3rd. I've published 3 books. I really enjoyed the bookmaking process. Working with a publisher, you know, the final say is not yours, essentially. I don't know if that was what it was like when you were working with your publisher, but how was that experience in, these are your images, you've spent so much time on them. How was that experience working with a publisher and trying to get the story across that you wanted to get across?
I think my situation is unique in that this was not a typical publisher.
Right.
So Lantern Books and my editor publisher, Martin Rowe, is just a beautiful, compassionate human being who also was sort of watching my work grow from a distance. I had asked him years ago if he would publish my work, but I was sort of too small and they didn't have the budget. But he saw that the work, I guess, was different and influential, and so he got on board and we worked together. And so while a lot of photographers don't get to, don't have ultimate say on things, I really did have a lot of that.
Great, yeah.
And so he was more of a business partner than just a publisher. And essentially I retained the rights to the book as well, so that the funding or like the sales would be coming into We Animals, because he also wanted to support We Animals.
Wow.
So
yes.
a gorgeous situation. I'm so lucky. And then he handled all of the nitty-gritty that I wanted nothing to do with. Yeah. And so he Lantern Books published We Animals and then Captive. And now with the next book, the working title is Animals in the Anthropocene. We Animals Media will actually publish it, which is interesting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, unless we get some huge publisher, probably we won't. It's a very niche subject matter. And so, yeah, part of what We Animals Media is doing now is, we're working with a lot of contributors doing my work, but we're going to be publishing, we're putting out our first feature film. It's madness.
Wow, that's so better than your wildest dreams, right? This is really nice. And
yeah.
You have, this also, we'll like always put all the links and everything else up to We Animals and your Instagram account and everything else on social media. But, with We Animals on Instagram, you've got a big following, you've got the archive and doing films and books. It's really an all-out assault on trying to get your story out there.
Oh, and one more thing about the all-out assault. We want to support people who are working in animal advocacy. We want to uplift their work and their voices and amplify all of that. So we have
great.
Yeah, we have a project called wait a minute. But first, by doing that, I mentor a lot of people in this field. A lot of people ask me questions about how I do what I do, and they have questions of access and all this. So we've filmed a masterclass series, 8 episodes, answering all the questions that people have for me. So there's that mentoring. And we also have a project called Unbound, which is about women on the front lines of animal advocacy worldwide, because there are tons of women, way more than men, in animal advocacy, and yet it's often a man at the top of an organization.
Surprise!
Yeah, that's nothing new. So a man in a position of leadership, and but a lot of busy bees who are the women doing the harder work, or the hard work, and so I decided to build a project called Unbound that celebrates women animal advocates and pioneers in the field, be it animal law, animal science, art.
No man at the top running everything.
So it's a focus on the women, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been just gorgeous. It's been a gift to me as well to be able to tell these really positive stories and not just always doing the investigative work.
That's great, and becoming a mentor is really nice at this stage of your career, of being able to look at the next generation. And you're not that old anyway, Jo. I'm only joking, but
no,
but it's true. Yeah, when you start getting people asking you questions, it doesn't actually feel like it was that long ago that you were perhaps asking the same questions to your influencers and your heroes. Which, by the way, I was actually curious to ask you that question. When you were, early 20s and you were shooting all these weddings and thinking that what you wanted to do was quite clear, your passion. Who were the photographers and influencers that you were looking at?
Magnum.
Yeah.
Magnum and the street photographers and their ability to get close to things and convey an instant moment to the masses. So the Magnum photographers, and then Jane Goodall as well. She's a hero to many of us. And I remember growing up and seeing her unconventional life, and that she decided to live in the forest and study chimpanzees and and was doing things her way. And I was like, wow, look at that. I want that life.
Yeah.
And so I always knew I would have an unconventional life of adventure, and I didn't know it would be this. But here we are.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And also, what's really nice, when I started doing these podcasts, the first 4 were all men, and I was like, wow, I really need to get some women involved, and it was a goal from the beginning. And you will now be the 3rd woman in a row on this podcast, and it's great. And it's particularly in an industry. Okay, I'm most of these have been more on the wildlife photography side. They definitely involve conservationists too, but it is still very much a male-dominated world, which I guess comes back to the Unbound project and the mission behind that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And that's also why I'm pleased to have an amplified voice now in the photography world. Is I know I'm representing a lot of ideas, but also women. I mean, women are out there doing a kick-ass job, but they may not be putting themselves out there so much in terms of gaining visibility and doing podcasts and like getting themselves out there. So that needs to change.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not only for women doing it for themselves, but for people giving them the opportunities.
Yeah, that's great. And there's already been lots of really good information. And one of the things I often always ask my guests is how I know from the analytics, a lot of young people listen to this. Also, a lot of women listen to this podcast, and a lot of people wanting, like, you get questioning, how do you kind of get into this work, or how do you get access? But having you've already given some great information about how people can start in this world, because I think a lot of people do have those feelings, and especially now with the vegan movement being so strong, animal rights being so strong. In fact, I just read today that I don't know if you heard about this. California have banned fur farms, which is absolutely awesome. They've also banned animals in performing in circuses. They've just signed this over, and this is bit by bit, things are changing.
It's a historical time to be involved in animal advocacy, because things are changing quickly, and so we can push things further quicker now. There's more of an understanding of animal sentience, and that it's just simply not right to have animals in circuses. It's simply unnecessary to wear animals. Oh, gosh, yeah. And so we are seeing countries ban fur production. We were seeing, like you said, banning of, even circuses and rodeos and pet stores. And yeah,
sometimes I'm naive and just assume that, lots of Western countries would have just banned this already. But when I read that, I was like, oh, they actually still had animal circuses in California. It's like, they did.
Money.
Yeah,
especially where there are populations and audiences, and and where there's an audience, there's money to be made. And so that's also, going back to like pieces of the puzzle. Education of the masses, but also pressure on companies to be ethical.
And it takes relentless hard work. You think about how long ago I watched Blackfish, for example, and that's still an issue, and it's just still going on. And actually, before I forget, encourage all the listeners to go and without a doubt check out the We Animals archive, because I was, in researching Jo and looking at all her work, was astonished at the amount of not only images but kind of categories you cover. I mean, there's like no stone unturned yet. I mean, what are there things that you feel in that archive that you are missing? I mean, it's just an incredible body of work, and what triggered my thought around that was doing a lot of work in zoos, for example, and highlighting the issues around animals in captivity. And on that, I was also curious to ask you, because this question comes up quite a lot about zoos and their roles. And my previous guest, Roxy, works at a zoo. She's a vegan activist and wildlife photographer, but she works as an interpreter. And I, as a kid, remember going to the zoo and loving it, and also getting inspired. I know they're centres for conservation, so there is good work that they do. I was just curious, with your experiences, what your kind of take on the zoo and the futures of zoos is.
Well, there is some good work that they can do, absolutely. but a lot of that work can be done in protected wild areas. Zoos are absolutely, by and large, made for our entertainment. Yeah, and the animals have almost no autonomy. They live in groups that are made for them. They get transported for breeding programs. These zoos are generally very, very problematic when you're thinking about the emotional life of the animal and the options that are available to them. Zoos can become places of true conservation, and they have a ways to go, and some of them are going there. There are leaders in the world doing that.
Who are they now, in your experience?
The Detroit Zoo has a huge humane education program. They have rescued over 30,000 animals.
Wow.
So it's a zoo that rescues, animals from entertainment, like polar bears performing animals and all this kind of thing. And they are, like, the Detroit Zoo invests in situ conservation in Africa for gorillas and other animals. And they're just finding innovative and digital ways to entertain us and to make lots of money, not off the backs of animals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the very short answer.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's great, and it's clear, and it's like we need this kind of seismic shift in our thinking about what these centres are for and what they represent. And
and we need these institutions. I mean, these are physical buildings that we can use for wildlife conservation. They employ really talented scientists and caretakers and behaviorists. Like, they have everything they need to continue to do a better job.
Yeah.
And they will. And we need to close all the roadside zoos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks for listening to part 1. There is so much in there to distill and digest, and you have a few days to do just that. As I mentioned, part 2 will be released on Friday the 27th of December, in just a few days. And wow, I can't wait to share it with you. What a great speaker Jo is, and so generous with her time. Photographers doing this kind of work are not on glamorous salaries by any stretch, and they all give up their time for these interviews for free. But here's where you can get involved. Head over to her page on the podcast section of my website, and there you will find tons of links about Jo, her work, and also We Animals Media, where you'll find a whole range of subjects that she's covered and some fascinating stories too. And you can help support. You can donate to them. Just visit weanimalsmedia.org/support. You can also help by sharing this podcast with your community, friends, family, on your social media platforms. Leave a review on iTunes. I say this every time, but it really helps us to reach a bigger audience. Looking forward to sharing part 2. Until then, have a happy Christmas, a happy holiday, and I'll see you soon.